Hi, Kiara. So you gave me a little more insight, and I still don't know the whole story behind, but based on what you told me, there's a number of things that can be going on. And I'm going to go over them, and hopefully it helps out. Two things that come to mind right off the bat: the fact that those pumps were working before, and you were extracting a lot more milk, and now they aren't. It depends on when you replaced the pump parts, because they do have a certain life cycle, and they do get weak, and they do need to be replaced. That being said, let's say you do that. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is nipple size changes. And a lot of times it does. And sometimes it can even change from week to week. So measuring yourself would be a huge plus to know what you're using as far as flange right now and what you are supposed to get to if there is a change in flange size, if it makes sense. Another thing that comes to mind is the fact that your baby is older now. Your baby might not be nursing as often, and/or might not be nursing as long on, so it might not be nursing the full, I don't know, some babies nurse for 30 minutes, some babies nurse on both sides, some babies don't. Mine used to just kind of nurse between 5 and 10 minutes. They were done, and a lot of times it was just one breast and they were done. So that can be a big difference. Now, if let's say that your baby is close to a year old, so yes, that would be. And what also makes me think about is the fact that you went from part-time job to being full-time. That can put a lot of stress on you, and that can make you. Of course, stress actually lowers supply. That's no surprise. Another thing, and I've noticed with myself, and I'm not a lactation consultant, so don't take my words like I am a lactation consultant, but from my personal experience, I breastfed like consistent daily with my daughter for 2.5 years. It took me until she was 4.5 to completely wean off. But just from that, and then my second child, he was breastfed daily for about 2.5 years, and again it took about until he was like about 4.5 to completely wean. And now I'm nursing my third child. He is a year and 8-9 months old almost. So I feel like based on my experiences, that whenever my child was going closer to being 2 years old, and even at like when it reached more like a year, when they aren't nursing as much, like they're slowing down, right? So normally eventually my supply was starting to slow down some, and at that point I didn't feel as thirsty, and so I paid no attention to. I drank how much I thought I should, and I tried to force myself, but then I thought about it, and I'm like, well, if I keep up with the high water intake, it could possibly keep me from reaching my goal as to tapering off some, right? So I just kind of listened to my body some. Not that I wasn't drinking quite a bit of water. Up until I went on vacation, I did drink a lot of water. But it wasn't as much as when he was an infant, if it makes sense. And that can contribute to the fact that because you're not producing as much milk, your body doesn't need as much water. Not that you don't need water, yes you do, but you're slowly, tapering off, and I, for one, felt like a little sick if I tried too much water, or if I felt like it was too much water, if it makes sense. I don't know how to really kind of, but it was just, instead of like, let's say, instead of me drinking a gallon and a half, I was drinking 30 ounces less, if it makes sense, which wasn't bad, and I wasn't like about to be upset about it. So that could be an issue, and maybe you should increase your water intake. And I'm not telling you to go to a gallon and a half. I don't know how much you weigh. That does matter too. And so basically, make sure you're consistent with how much water you used to drink when you were producing 6 to 8 ounces, if it makes sense. And then also make sure that you replace all those parts, like I said. And once you're done with that, measure your nipple and make sure that you are at that, you're using the right flange. Okay. So one other thing that I thought about was that I don't know whether you only nurse throughout the night or throughout the entire day when you're not at work. But if you do, what I think would probably help, if let's say all your pump parts are replaced and you know your flange size, is actually add a pump, let's say in the middle of the night, even if it is for 5-10 minutes. Okay. Add it so it can, and especially honestly, if let's say your baby doesn't nurse but on one side every time, right? One thing that actually I've noticed every time, whether it is a wearable pump or not, is the fact that because my son was only nursing on one side and he wasn't nursing on the other every time he nursed, I actually took advantage of that and of the letdown. And the letdown that it comes with pumping, a single pumping and nursing on the other side, it's much better than when you double pump while at work, if it makes sense. So if your baby breastfeeds on one side and he will not take the other in one breastfeeding session, what I would do if I were to work outside the home again, like I used to with my daughter, is I would single pump, whether it was wearable or not. I would just single pump while I'm nursing my son, and whatever I collect, and it is extra pumping sessions as it is, so that way it could help increase yours.